You are now listening to the fastest growing faith-based podcast that empowers, inspires, and motivates your walk with Christ. Ladies, don't you know you are fearfully and wonderfully made? You are far more precious than rubies. You are destiny shakers. Fellas, you are strong, visionaries, and mighty kingdom builders. Together, we are Virtue with Vision, the podcast. We discuss relationships, goals, life, and a whole lot of Jesus. Always remember, you deserve God's best because you are God's best. Let's tune in to this week's episode. Welcome to Virtue with Vision, the podcast. I'm your host, Mary Lee Vance, here to remind you that you deserve God's best because you are God's best. Hey guys, I'm super excited for this last episode of this series this month. It has been so amazing. Yes, I want to let you guys know that I am going to be taking a break and we're going to pick up back in August. I promise I got your back, but there are some things in the background that I am working on, especially for those that want to start a podcast. So if you are thinking of starting a podcast, you're like, man, there's something on the inside of me that I want to talk about, that I'm passionate about, that people need to hear. You need to make sure that you get onto my wait list because enrollment is opening soon. So check out the sponsored content.
Have an idea for a podcast but haven't put it into action? Are you new to podcasting and are overwhelmed with all the information out there? Pods and Excellence is your one-stop shop for all of your podcasting needs. If you're just in the idea stage or struggling to decide what equipment to use to get started, Pods and Excellence is for you. Pods and Excellence is designed to help podcasters cultivate their podcast production, help secure high-profile guests on their show, and how to get in front of the right audience so you can grow exponentially. You need Pods and Excellence if you are struggling with growing your audience, having a hard time monetizing, running out of things to talk about, and just flat out lost with how podcasting works. Then Pods and Excellence is for you. Join Pods and Excellence today and take your podcast to the next level. Go to maryleevance.com to get started today.
Welcome back to Virtue with Vision, the podcast. I'm your host, Mary Lee Vance, here to remind you that you deserve God's best because you are God's best. If you guys are like, who is on the screen? She was here last month for Jesus in Therapy. She has this amazing thing called Prayerapy, and I am so excited to have Destiny back with us this evening. Say hi to everyone, Destiny.
Hello.
Thank you so much for agreeing to join me back. I just love making friends that are strangers. If you can, let us know again what you do and what it's all about.
So hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Mary, for this opportunity. Like she said, my name is Destiny Thomas, but I am known as the Prayerapist, and that's because I assist high-achieving women confidently discern the voice of God to heal internally and to live in purpose. I also am an advocate for women that are struggling with infertility. I'm an author 2 times, a podcast host, a conference host, and a mom and a wife. I don't know.
all of the things. Well, I'm super excited to talk to you today because it was like spilling over in our last conversation. And I was like, OMG, I don't want to let her go because it's just so good. So you said that you're an advocate for those that are suffering with infertility. So I like myself because you guys know that I am very straightforward with my struggles because I'm the type of person that's like, hey, a lot of people try to discuss things when they're over the hump. They're like, oh, I struggled with infertility for years, but now I'm finally pregnant. No, I want to go on the journey with you guys. The people that may look like me that are like, man, I'm suffering too, because we're in this together. I'd rather be the person that speaks up, the strong friend. I'm not always strong. As Destiny, I low-key broke down before we went live, but I want people to understand that they're not alone. I want people to understand that, hey, I'm a human. If you're angry with Jesus, if you're mad, if you're upset, if you're not okay, that is okay. And finding yourself in that and being okay with that is totally fine. So, Destiny, if you can refresh us about your infertility journey and how you were able to find God in the midst of, like, if you could tell us, were you ever mad at God about this journey? Were you ever upset? Were you ever like, yo, Jesus, I'm out. I ain't trying to do this with you no more. If you can, let us know what your journey was.
Absolutely. So I got married in 2010. I originally intended to not have children for about 3 to 3.5 years. And I used to say it all the time. Like when people are like, when are you gonna start having the kids? I'm like, we're waiting. I'm only 21. We're waiting. And then doing what married people did, I ended up conceiving, but I ended up miscarrying. And it was something that ended up like clicking, like, oh my gosh, is something wrong with me? Like everybody in my family has kids. Like, why did this happen to me? And so for a year we tried, and I didn't get pregnant again. And I was so confused because I'm like, well, when I wasn't trying, I got pregnant and lost it. Is something really wrong with me? And that's when I went to go see my OBG, and he diagnosed me with polycystic ovarian syndrome, or PCOS at the time, or, that's what it's short for. And during that journey, I didn't want anything to do with God, because for me, I had did it the right way, right? I got married. I owned a home. I tell people I even drove a Mercedes-Benz minivan. So I had a minivan with no kids. Like that wasn't adding up for me. You know what I mean? We had good paying jobs where we could provide for them. And so I was like done with God. I was like, you have not only forsaken me and rejected me, but then you gave me this broken body. Like, how does that math for me? Right. And so my husband was actually like kind of blown away, and because he's like, but you love God. Like you introduced me to God on another level. Like, what you mean you don't want nothing to do with God? And I'm like, but this is like, you're not understanding. Like, baby, I'm giving him everything, and he can't give me the one thing I wanted,
Come on.
And so I hired the most expensive or the top endocrinologist in my area. I went through all the tests, laparoscopies, IUIs, injections, and blood work. I mean, I had a indent in my arm. That's how much blood work I gave. Like, I was committed to that process. And it wasn't yielding me a great result at all. And I had gained so much weight from the Clomid and the injections of progesterone, and my hormones were everywhere, mentally, physically, and emotionally. And I just was like, God, why is this happening to me? Like, why? So yeah, I went, and then I'll never forget. This was probably like the cherry on top for me, or like my breaking point. So I went through this stage where, because I couldn't have kids, I bought a dog, like a really expensive dog on top of that, right? And I dressed her in clothes and had a stroller for her, like I was one of those, And we were at a family event down south, and one of my cousins was like, Destiny, why are you dressing up that dog like it's a baby? Like, why don't you just have a baby? And one of my aunts said, you didn't know Destiny can't have a baby. She's broken. And that thing, like, and if you knew like my down south family, like that's just kind of how they are.
That's how they are. What part? Wait, hold on. Let's take a pause. Comma. What part of the South? Because baby, my family like that too. We from the South. I'll be like, that's so triggering. Like, golly.
Right. They're from Conway, South Carolina.
Conway. Listen, my family from Sumter. I'm trying to tell you. It's something about them Southern folks. I'm trying to tell you. I love them though. But yes, they are very straightforward. And it's not that they don't mean best. It's just that those words are harming.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, continue.
So that was it for me, because I'm like broken, like, it just hurts like to my core, because this is my family. Everybody seems to can have kids. And at that time, nobody in my family, from my mom's side, my dad's side, nobody even heard of PCOS. So it was just even more disheartening, because I'm like, this isn't even something that I could go to people like, and they're like, oh yeah, I had that. My mom was like, I had fibroids before, but that's not the same at all. So it just was a very lonely process. And even as much as my husband wanted to be there for me, he couldn't understand, because he's like, I've never even dealt with this.
Dealt with it. Right.
Yeah.
I think that it's very important for those that are struggling, because I'm in the midst of it. You were diagnosed with PCOS. So imagine on the flip side with me, you're going to different OBGYNs. In fact, I went to 3 until I found the one that I actually like. And she looks like me and I like her. I'm with her. I roll with her. But to hear, I don't know, like, it's not PCOS, it's not endometriosis, it's not any of these things. You have unexplained infertility. And it's like, what you mean you don't know? You didn't went to all of these years of school and all of this and you don't know. I'm like, now you need to know something. We need to figure this out. There needs to be a conversation. There needs to be someone that knows something somewhere, because what am I supposed to do? So imagine having a doctor telling you, well, we're going to just treat it as if it is this. No, I don't want to be treated as if it is something. I want to know what it is. Because for me, I feel like now I'm just in the tumbleweeds of, I don't even know what's wrong with me. Here I am. I'm trying to have a child and you're telling me you don't know. No, I'm going to need you to know. And I'm going to need you to find out. So, for me, it's a different journey. And I try to explain that it's different for everybody. Like, you can have endometriosis. I don't know. I don't know what I got. I don't know. But you could have fibroids that is stopping you from conceiving. And that could be a difficult thing to endure when you really can't come straight forward out with people and be like, this is what I'm going through, XYZ 1, 2, 3, and have them and think that they're going to understand, when quite frankly they do not, when quite frankly they're not going to be able to relate. So when you had no one and you were going through this journey by yourself, Destiny, how were you able to find comfort in the process? And how were you able to say, hey, Destiny needs to try a different route? Because you said that you went through the whole process with the specialist and it wasn't yielding results. So how were you able to say, okay, let me just stop everything and focus in on what God is asking and calling me to do? And how were you able to go forward in that manner?
So I was probably at year 2, almost probably year 3, because it was 3.5 years. And my husband, my mom, and my private time with God, I kept getting the same answer, like, you're being a hypocrite. You're being a hypocrite. And I'm like, how? Like, y'all don't understand my pain, right? And they were like, you're being a hypocrite because you're telling people God is so good. He gave you your husband. He gave you this house. He gave you these things, but yet and still you don't have his first commandment, which is to be fruitful and multiply. Like, that's just not in his character of who he is. And I was like, you're right, but that sounds good. Like, right now I want what I want and I'm not getting what I want. And one thing I did realize, or God brought clarity to, is I was what I like to call an entitled Christian. The entirety of my relationship with God, all I did was ask and it happened. I asked for a good job, I got it. I asked for a nice car, I got, and infertility was that fork in the road where I'm asking, and nothing's coming, And so that was the space and opportunity where I had to really have those uncomfortable conversations of, do I really trust God as much as I say I do? Does my actions say I trust God as much as I say I do? And so I had that conversation. And so I was like, you know what? God, first of all, I want to repent because I ain't want nothing to do with him. And I said, God, I literally want nothing to do with you. Like, that's what I said. And then I had this like spirit of fear come over me. And I was like, oh my gosh, what did I say?
I'm just kidding. Pineapple, I don't like it. I'm just kidding. Lord, love me again. I want nothing to do with you, but still love me. I'm sorry. Facts.
I was like, hold on.
Yeah.
Don't get too carried away. Don't get too carried away, okay? You want to be here to be able to have a baby, okay? Don't do that.
Facts.
And so then I called my endocrinologist and I said, I'm not coming back. I said, oh, no. So before I called my endocrinologist and said I wasn't coming back, the Lord told me the conversation about being a hypocrite. So I started to meditate on the book of Samuel and Hannah's story. And I'm a natural analytic and data girl. So I'm like, there's something here. There's a hidden gem in this book because she cried out to God and she got a baby. And so I was like, there was something in her cry to God. Like it had to be like from the pits of her womb. And so I locked myself in my office and I literally laid in the floor and I just wailed. And I was like, God, whatever you have to do to open my womb, I'm giving you permission to do that, right? Like whatever you need to show me about myself, I'm willing to do that. Now, I thought he was going to say you are still a little bit selfish, something like that. No. So I kept hearing, because I did go to therapy during this time as well. And so things that were coming up was like rejection and abandonment and loss of identity. And so I'm like, okay, well, my dad wasn't in my life, those things. So literally like the next month I was on the phone with my mom and my mom was like, there's something I have to tell you. And she was like, your dad's not your dad. I was like, what? Now, Lord, when I said I wanted you to do anything you needed to do to have me have a baby, I didn't mean that. And he was like, that's what I meant by loss of identity. Because a prayer that I said all the time was, God, before I produce fruit on this earth, I want to be able to tell them the truth about where their bloodline comes from, like who they're, right? And it's so minute, but I think sometimes we don't realize what we ask God for, right? And I would not have been able to give that to my kids because I was under the impression somebody else was my daddy, right? And so that was the first thing that happened. My mom called me and told me that. And then I was upset with God again because I'm like, why is this happening to me? And God's like,
you asked.
This is what you asked for. So after that happened, and it like literally after that moment happened, everything went fast. So my mom told me that on a phone call. Probably 2 weeks later, she called me and said, God told me you're about to get pregnant. And my mom is like high level prophetic. Like, y'all think I'm prophetic? She's high level. And I was like, okay, Mom, he's been saying that for 3 years now. And she was like, no, really. He said you're going to get pregnant and the baby's going to be born on February 8th. And I was like, what? I pulled up my calendar. I was like, that means I have to get pregnant in May. And the week that it's saying I have to get pregnant.
You like me. I'm going to do the counting. You said this month and this day, 9 weeks. Oh, wait, hold on. The start of the last period. Let's go rewind. You are me and I are you. I will be doing that all the time. Absolutely.
I said, but this math not mathing because the day it says I'm going to conceive, I'm literally going to be coming back in town from Atlanta. And my husband's literally, like, we literally have that one day. And she was like, well, that ain't got nothing to do with me. But that's what God told me. So take it as you will. Just in this call by saying, God, I believe you can do it. And that's literally what I said. And I forgot. And so the next couple of weeks after that, I went to go meet my now biological father and his family. But I went to church with my grandfather that morning. And my grandfather, he was at the time, he was a pastor. And his usher came up to me. And she was like, your grandfather asked if I could pray for you. And I was like, I mean, if he sent you to pray for me, go ahead, right?
Thanks.
And so she put her hand on my womb. And usually they pray, touch your head. So I was like, what? Because my grandfather didn't know I was battling infertility. It's not something you talk to your grandfather about, So she put her hand on my womb and she whispered in my ear and she said, you keep asking God, why is this happening to you? But this is what you asked for the seed to be planted at just the right time. And I broke down crying, like wailing. And I went to go meet my biological father and his family. And that went the way it went. And literally probably a month later is when I conceived my first son.
Oh, Wow, this is so good. This story good. Like it kind of like, dang, is this popcorn where it's at? Because it's so good to see that God has placed certain people at the right time for the right season, for the right thing to speak to you, even when you're discouraged. So we're gonna hop into our first commercial. When we come back, I want to continue the story because I want to talk about your waiting period. I want to talk about the different emotions that we as women, and as we were discussing before, being okay with that, because people can be so harsh, even though they don't mean to be, with their words, and tell us to be encouraged and love Jesus and trust the Lord. But it doesn't always work like that when you're in the midst of waiting, and it could be for a family or anything. So you are listening to Virtue with Vision, the podcast with me, Mary Lee Vance.
Have an idea for a podcast but haven't put it into action? Are you new to podcasting and are overwhelmed with all the information out there? Pods and Excellence is your one-stop shop for all of your podcasting needs. If you're just in the idea stage or struggling to decide what equipment to use to get started, Pods and Excellence is for you. Pods and Excellence is designed to help podcasters cultivate their podcast production, help secure high-profile guests on their show, and how to get in front of the right audience so you can grow exponentially. You need Pods and Excellence if you are struggling with growing your audience, having a hard time monetizing, running out of things to talk about, and just flat out lost with how podcasting works. Then Pods and Excellence is for you. Join Pods and Excellence today and take your podcast to the next level. Go to maryleevance.com to get started today.
Tired of dating the wrong one? Do you keep asking God, where is my Boaz? Are you ready to marry the man of your dreams? Fleshly Date or Godly Mate is the book for you. It gives you insight on the difference of dating with or without God in the middle. And it prepares you for God's best. Always remember, you deserve God's best because you are God's best. You can purchase Fleshly Date or Godly Mate at maryleevance.com. Are you a business looking for ways to advertise your brand at an affordable rate? Do you want your brand in front of real people and a real audience? Do you need help with what to say and how to promote your message to the world? Whether you have a clothing brand or you're a makeup artist, a top-tier food brand wanting to attract customers to your tasty food, or any product or service, Virtue with Vision would love to partner with you. Virtue with Vision can help you with your script, setting up your commercial, and an ad spot on Virtue with Vision, the podcast. Let us help you take your brand to the next level. Send all inquiries to info@maryleevance.com. Again, that's info@maryleevance.com to get started at an affordable rate today. Virtue with Vision is the fastest growing faith-based podcast that empowers, inspires, and motivates your walk with Christ. Go subscribe to this podcast and go tell a friend. If you need a relatable podcast to listen to while you're going to work or cruising out on the town, Virtue with Vision, the podcast, is for you. We laugh, have fun, grow, and get a little bit more acquainted with God each time. Virtue with Vision, the podcast, is available on all media platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, and Amazon Music. Subscribe today so you can check out all of my past and upcoming episodes. Go subscribe now. And always remember, you deserve God's best because you are God's best. Welcome back to Virtue with Vision, the podcast. I'm your host, Mary Lee Vance, here to remind you that you deserve God's best because you are God's best. I have Destiny here, and man, her testimony is just so amazing. Like, I could hear it over and over and over and still get the same excited feelings, just because you went through it and you're on the other side. And then the us that are still going through it, we're like, man, is there hope to get on the other side? So if you can just explain what your feelings were when you had to wait. What did you do with your feelings? How were you able to find comfort in that time of waiting? Because it's hard.
So in the beginning, I didn't make the wisest decisions. I spent a lot of money. I got in a lot of debt because I needed to travel. I didn't like being home. It was a reminder that I didn't have a home because I couldn't have kids personally for me. So I vacationed a lot. I spent a lot of money. I ate a lot. I hung out with my friends. Like, I just didn't want to be home. Well, like I said, my husband has traveled a lot for work even back then. I also took a night shift at work. Like, it was the worst shift you could ever take, but I was working 3:30 p.m. to 2 a.m. in the morning.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so that even made it worse because here I am crying to God, asking him to give me a baby. But then I picked a schedule where literally me and my husband were working opposite shifts. So we hardly ever seen each other. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But that was like me trying to control it, like me trying to, I don't know, try to figure it out. So that was like the beginning, like maybe the first year and a half, I was like upset. I used to also like overdo it with friends, like for baby showers, because I kept trying to prove to myself that I was proving to God that I wasn't coveting, that I wasn't jealous, that I really meant people well, even
Right.
though because I was afraid to deal with real emotions that I don't want to celebrate you. And not because I'm spiteful or hateful, but I don't feel like this is fair, you know? And so
Yes.
I had one spectrum where I was like, literally when I was paying off debt, I looked at my credit card and I got sick to my stomach because a lot of the stuff up there was gifts I bought just because I wanted to, you know, portray that I wasn't hurting as bad as I was. And then a second portion of my infertility was still more traveling. I did a lot of traveling.
She said I'm outside. How about that?
Listen, all the time. Don't come calling me because you won't find me. Okay. I did a lot of then like that second period is when I did a lot of like trying to get back to God. So I did a lot of journaling. I did a lot of like expressing my truth and like really like, God, you know, why is this happening to me? Now, I didn't do well of sitting still and waiting for his response, which is what happened on that third little lap. But I did a lot of venting and just like, you know, God, I don't think it's fair that you would give me a husband who people desire to be married, but then not allow me to give him a legacy. Like, why would you do that to me? Like it even sometimes would get dark. Like, what is the point of me living if a woman's position in life is to have children? Like, you know, and so it was really just a lot of venting and journaling and like really just crying out. And I locked myself, like I would literally go to work and come home and lock myself in the room. I didn't really want to deal with people because I felt like nobody understood. Like, you could say all day, like, and I might get emotional, but like, you know, people, and I appreciate people for trying, but this may sound really harsh, but I would have preferred them to just shut up. You know what I mean? I like, let's just act like it's an elephant in the room we're not going to talk about because your trying is like triggering to me. You know what I mean? So it was like, I'd rather like not answer the phone. I'd rather like, you know, sit in my room and binge watch TV. Like, and it didn't. And what made it even worse, I think, was that I was going through all the treatment and I was gaining so much weight. So I'm like, you're telling me I have to lose weight to have a baby, But then you have me on these hormones that are making me gain this insane amount of weight and have my emotions everywhere. Like, none of this stuff is adding up to me.
Not making sense. And I think it's so important. You've said a couple of things that I want to hit on. First, when it comes to baby showers, me and you, same person. I wanted to do over, above, and beyond to let you guys know that I'm there and I care, because I'm really, honestly, I'm not a jealous person. Like, I'm naturally like that. There are people that you be like, dang, she got that jealous energy. Me, I'm not. I'd be like, I'm so excited. Like, I'm really excited. Like, it's actually mine. But it's also an internalizing thing where it's hard for me to be super excited because, like, dang, I'm trying to, and I don't even know what this is all about. I don't even know how this is working. I don't even know if it is working. So I do agree. Sometimes it's okay to say no. It's okay to say, I'm not going to make it. And you won't be there, because if it's triggering, and that's the last thing I want to do is put the attention on me, because the attention is about that person. The love is about the baby that they're about to birth. So I prefer to remove myself. I'm gonna send you a gift, but I probably won't show up. And I'm gonna still love you, and that's okay. Sometimes we don't have to put on this strong front of I have to be everything to everyone, when some things that you actually endure or go through are actually really triggering. They trigger your emotions. They trigger sadness, because you do not have a baby. And if that is something that you desire, then yes, it is going to be a hard thing to endure, to fight through, when your best friend or your coworker or your homie, your friend is like, yes, I'm expecting, I want you to come to my baby shower. My immediate answer is going to be no. Like, for me, I'm just going to say no. And I think another thing that you mentioned as well is when you want people to just stop. Sometimes I like this past Mother's Day, I love people. I really do. And I know that they mean good and I know that they mean well. But when you send someone happy future Mother's Day, that is, to me, that's beyond. Or if you're telling me that I need to wait in expectation, expecting God to move. And I was talking to you about this before we went live. Like, that's painful to hear. Sometimes it's not about hearing the word of God. Sometimes it's not that our relationship with God is not okay, and it's not the point of that we don't trust God in certain circumstances. It's just that this is the hardest battle that you're fighting when you don't know what exactly is going on with your body, and you're like, what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to endure this? How am I supposed to fight? So when people come to you and they're like, oh my gosh, happy future Mother's Day, I just see it happening for you, and Lord, and I'm like, ew, shut up, that's dumb. Like, I don't want to hear it. I was back home. I was back in my not hometown, because I didn't grow up there, but my family's hometown, for Mother's Day weekend, because my great aunt, she died of 102. She was cute. I was like, all right now. She passed away, and we were at her repast, I guess you would call it. I don't know. She had a memorial, and whatever they do in the South. I don't know. So a lady comes up to me and she's like, oh my gosh, how are you? What are you doing? Who are you? You're so great. And I'm like, oh, nice to meet you. My name is Mary, blah, blah, blah. I don't mention kids. I don't be talking to strangers about kids because that ain't none of your business. Okay. So she was just like, yes, it's just so amazing to see your family tree and how long people live, because I do my great aunt, my other great aunt, there's like a slew of sisters and brothers. The oldest was 110 on down. Like, they be living for a long time. Okay. So they do. And she was like, yes, she started talking about twins, and I don't know how she immediately got there. And I don't really bring up that I do want twins. I want 5 kids. If anyone talks to me, I'm always say 5 kids, a boy, identical twin boys, identical twin girls. I don't want a miracle 6, tie my tubes, go ahead and get that taken out. I don't know, but I just know that I want 5, and I've always stood on that. But she just started saying like, oh, do twins run in your family? I was like, yeah, my dad was an identical twin. She's like, oh my gosh, you're gonna have twins. Twins skip generations. I just see you having twins. I was like, thank you. And then I'm in the car, right? And I'm like, yeah, I wanted to slap the lady that I was talking to because she's mentioning kids. Like, I want to talk about that.
Right.
And my thing is, it was triggering for me because it's like you're trying so hard to make something happen. You can time it. You can try not to stress about it. You can do all of the things and still end up short and disappointed. And when you end up disappointed month after month, negative test after negative test, it's like, where do you go from here? How do you get the help? And even when you're not, I personally don't trust doctors like that. I got a hard time thinking that they don't want just money out of me. So it's difficult. So how we're and spending this time and being able to vent to God, because venting to God, he wants to hear, he gives you feelings. Your feelings are real, they are valid. How were you able to express that? Because at one point I get upset, I get scared to be like, I don't like you right now. I don't like you. I don't like what you about. I don't like what you saying. I don't like how you making me feel. I don't understand why I'm waiting. So how were you able to be completely honest with God and still be able to have a conversation and a relationship with him?
I had to do some, like I said, I was an entitled Christian, and I had to have some really uncomfortable conversations with myself and ask myself, like, okay, Destiny, how much of who God is to you is based off of what people told you, right? How much of who you believe God is based off of what you've learned, like, you know what I mean? And really get down to, okay, so what do you know about God? Like, who is God really to you? How intentional are you about talking to God? And so in having those uncomfortable conversations, it gave me the space for God to show me who he was. And so I always say God comes to you in different forms. Like, he can be your best friend and your dad, and, you know, and so I just would kind of, I guess, put different hats on him. And so like I do with my mom. So me and my mom have been working on building a more closer relationship. So sometimes I call my mom and say, hey, mom, I just need to vent. Meaning, I don't want you to try to fix my problem right now. I just want to get it out, right? And so that's what I had to do to God. Like, God, I'm coming to you today as my best friend. Meaning, I'm going to be, like, brutally honest. Like, I will be my best friend. Like, I hate you right now. You're not answering my phone calls. You're not, like, and so I would have those moments, and then I would have those moments where I would say, okay, Dad, I mean, today I need my dad. God, remind me of who you are. Remind me of how good you are. Remind me of the promise you gave me and how you literally can't lie. So even though the timing is not adding up, your promise is still good. And so being able to come to him in my truest form by saying, this is who I need today, and him being able to show up in that role.
Yeah, that's good. Like, yeah, sometimes I need to homie Jesus and look here, homie, I don't like you like that. Like, back, player. And then other times, yeah, it's like, I just need you to be dad. I need you to tell me that your promises are yes and amen. I need you to tell me that, you know, you are a man that you shall not lie. I need you to tell me that, because right now in my circumstances, for the length of time that I've been waiting, I think that you are a man that lies. And sometimes you have to, I am the type of person that is going to be real down and dirty with it, because I'm like, if your word says this, I'm not understanding this outbreak of why I feel like this. If I'm supposed to submit to your time, how if you're not telling me what I need to do, if you're not conversing with me, if we're not having this conversation, how do I know how to move forward? I'm not gonna lie, after I had my specialist appointment and it didn't go well, I was like, I don't even do religion anymore. I'm done. I'm done with Jesus. I don't want to pray. I don't want to listen to the Lord. I don't want to listen to a gospel song. I don't want to listen to Maverick City. I don't want.
You said Maverick City, you know it's real, right?
Because I can listen to Maverick City all day and be good. I was like, nope, I don't want to listen to them. I don't want to listen to nothing because this hurts and I'm tired of hurting. I'm tired of going through this and I don't understand. And then when people are like, oh, you just need to wait. No. This is no. This is a different type of wait. Okay. I can wait for a house. I can wait for a car. I can wait for anything. I don't have a problem waiting. But when it comes to something that's not connecting, like you're not understanding what's going on with your body, the doctors don't understand what's going on with your body, then, you're bringing Jesus into this and he ain't like, I don't know if he just looking, laughing, or just waiting. I don't know. I don't know what he's doing. So how am I able to move forward? So you started this thing called Prayerapy, right? And that's writing down, your honest feelings, your honest, true feelings. And from our last conversation last month, girl, I just started cussing out the Lord in writing. No, not cussing him out, but being in my truest form of letting him know how I really feel in certain moments, even if I have high moments or good days. And when I talk to him on my bad days, because that matters. So I want to hop in our last segment about Prayerapy, what that means, what you do, the components to it, and how that worked for you in our last segment of the show. So you are listening to Virtue with Vision, the podcast with me, Mary Lee Vance. Just talk it, you gotta rock it too. What am I talking about? Virtue with Vision apparel. That's right, my t-shirt line. We not only know we're anointed, but we rock that anointed drip. We read that we should work like Ruth, have discipline like Esther, and pray like Hannah. Why not wear what you believe? Virtue with Vision apparel line believes that we not only read the word, teach the word, and speak the word, but we wear the word too. Go to www.maryleevance.com today and get your drip today. And always remember, you deserve God's best because you are God's best.
Do you have an idea for a podcast but haven't put it into action? Are you new to podcasting and are overwhelmed with all the information out there? Pods and Excellence is your one-stop shop for all of your podcasting needs. If you're just in the idea stage or struggling to decide what equipment to use to get started, Pods and Excellence is for you. Pods and Excellence is designed to help podcasters cultivate their podcast production, help secure high-profile guests on their show, and how to get in front of the right audience so you can grow exponentially. You need Pods and Excellence if you are struggling with growing your audience, having a hard time monetizing, running out of things to talk about, and just flat out lost with how podcasting works. Then Pods and Excellence is for you. Join Pods and Excellence today and take your podcast to the next level. Go to maryleevance.com to get started today.
Virtue with Vision is the fastest growing faith-based podcast that empowers, inspires, and motivates your walk with Christ. Go subscribe to this podcast and go tell a friend. If you need a relatable podcast to listen to while you're going to work or cruising out on the town, Virtue with Vision, the podcast, is for you. We laugh, have fun, grow, and get a little bit more acquainted with God each time. Virtue with Vision, the podcast, is available on all media platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, and Amazon Music. Subscribe today so you can check out all of my past and upcoming episodes. Go subscribe now. And always remember, you deserve God's best because you are God's best. Welcome back to Virtue with Vision, the podcast. I'm your host, Mary Lee Vance, here to remind you that you deserve God's best because you are God's best. I first have to say, Destiny, you my best friend, you don't even know it. I have so much fun with you. When I hear you speak, I am a Facebook stalker. I listen to you speak on your platform, and I absolutely enjoy you. I love your being. I love what God is doing through you. And I'm so excited to see what he continues to do because you are touching lives. You're touching my life all over. And I want to know what your strategy was with Prayer Peak. If you can let me know how you became the therapist and how things worked in your favor through therapy.
So therapy was something just for me, like nothing I thought I would ever have to share with the world. But going through infertility, I had got to a point, like I said, I was just venting to God, letting him know my frustrations, letting him know like where I felt not adequate, like not worthy, really getting to those deep places that I think sometimes we're afraid to go to, of why this, struggle was so hard for me. For me, it was a lot of me not having control for once. Like I didn't realize, but I had control my entire life. And for once in my life, I didn't have it. Like you said, I could time all I wanted, but there was nothing I could physically do to make an egg go where it's supposed to, like I did what I do. So it was having those conversations with God, like, and so it went from, I started, like I shared before, I started with just venting out those things. And then all of a sudden, one day I was venting out those things and I heard a subtle voice say, write GS. And so then I wrote GS because I just thought, okay, GS. And then I kept writing. And I did this for some days. And then I came one day, I felt the unction to go back and read all of the GSs. And I went back and I was like, oh my gosh, God is like legit responding to me. Like, oh my God. Like, especially because unfortunately I come from a tradition where it's like, you don't question God. God's going to do what God's going to do when he want to do it.
I got questions.
All of them. Okay. I got a whole bunch. So I was like, oh my gosh, she's responding to me. And so once I realized that, I began to even ask more questions, like, hold on, you really talking? That's you, And so I was like, God, I've been in this battle for, at this point, 3 years, 2.5, whatever. Like, why are you why are you forsaking me? I know your word says you don't do that, but baby, what I see with my eyes, and I got 4 of them, they saying something different. Okay. And so he was like, Destiny, this whole time you weren't praying at all. You were actually just venting. And I was appalled. I actually was a little offended because I'm like, Lord, I've been heeing and hawing, crying in the fetal position, doing all the things. Like, how can you say I haven't been praying, And he was like, to pray is to be in conversation with me. It's you vent, you let all the emotions out, but you sit still long enough to get my perspective, to get my solution to your problem. And you haven't done that. And so it in the midst of this, it's like coinciding with me finding out about my dad and all of those things. And so the Lord began to take me through this healing journey where literally he would tell me, like, I need you to forgive these people. I need you to, because my mom gave me the option if I wanted to get the paternity test when my father came out. And he was like, I want you to go through with that. I want you to, and that was the journey of itself. And so he took me through this journey of healing and giving me these instructions of becoming who he truly wanted me to become. And that was simultaneously with, finding out about my dad and all of those things. And so fast forward October of 2017, I'm using this method and God tells me to leave my corporate job. And I'm like, what we about to do? And he kept saying, I'm not going to tell you until you leave. And I'm like, what? So I ended up leaving and he said, I want you to write your your infertility story in a book, and I want you to go on Facebook and begin to pray for my people. And so I started writing my book, and I started going on live and praying for people. And I had these group of women who would come on live prayer, and they'd be like, "Oh my gosh, you literally read out of my journal. Like, how do you hear so clearly from God?" And I was like, through this like method he gave me during like infertility. And so he said, when he said you were venting and not praying, I was like, well, God, I'm analytic, I'm green personality, like show me how to never do that again. And so he gave me these 6 steps. And I always like to say, like, the 6 steps are not telling you how to pray, because you should pray to God the way you talk to your friends. Like, you should be authentic to yourself. But the 6 steps are key components that we sometimes miss in prayer because we're coming in such a passionate state, if that makes sense. And so, number one is creating the atmosphere. Number one is creating the atmosphere. Really making your space inhabitable for God to reside, right? Number 2 is ask. A lot of us don't ask to hear from God. We're just like, God, is that? We never said, is that you? So really asking God, I say, God, give me peace. Remove the spirit of distraction, because my mind can roam sometimes. And I'll say, and allow me to hear from you and only you in this time. And it's like literally my brain goes on a pause and I can just hear from God. Like it's quite amazing, I must say. And then the number 3 is gratitude. Like I said, a lot of times we go in so passionate wanting what we want that we don't remember how good he is. And it's something about being reminded of how good he is that reminds us that he actually can do this too. Right?
Yeah.
And so I go in and I'm like, God, thank you for my food. Thank you for, and it reminds me that he is providing for me to eat. He is doing these things. So he does want to give me the desires of my heart because he placed them there, Number 4 is pray vulnerably, which is where you got to have that uncomfortable venting session where you just let it all out, air it all out, be as transparent and honest, be naked with God is what I like to say. And then number 5 is be still and listen. And that's when you begin to ask God the hard questions, but you let him respond. Because what GS stood for was God speaking, letting him speak, right? And then number 6 is ask God for confirmation. God, I heard you say this, but confirm it with your words so I know that this was you. And so what I do in therapy is I take people through that process, but it's kind of like counseling and therapy, because what happens in the session is the Holy Spirit will begin to reveal those inner healing points. So for me, he kept saying, Destiny, you never dealt with your seed of rejection. I was like, what does that mean? Like, God, don't use that type of verbiage. Like, just be straight with me, right? Mm-hmm. And he was like, you keep saying you dealt with rejection and abandonment, but you never asked me where the seed was planted. And I was like, okay, well, where was the seed planted? And he was like, it was planted when you were in your mother's womb, when your father found out about you, but he didn't want anything to do with you. And so that seed started there, and then it just kind of grew from there. And then infertility just put it even heavier there, because now your body's rejecting you and now I'm rejecting you, but you have to deal with that seed. And so he took me through that process of dealing with that seed where I could then believe that my body's not rejecting me, right? I just have to not do something to make it fruitful, but I have to internalize that it is meant, like God made me to produce a child. Like that's what he made for me. I can't speak for anybody else, right? But that's what he made for me. And so I believe he's going to do that. I believe he wants to do that for me. But I will also say infertility literally was the hardest season of my life, but it was the most fruitful season of my life.
Oh.
Therapy came from infertility. Becoming an author came from infertility. Becoming a speaker came from infertility. My first t-shirt line came from infertility. That was the hardest moment. That moment of my life felt like unbearable. Like I literally felt like I was suffocating, and people were standing around watching me suffocate, and nobody was sending me a lifeline, right?
Yeah.
So the amount of people that I've been able to just witness to because of infertility, and I think sometimes we're so in it that we can't even fathom like how is this going to be to my good one day outside of being a mother to a child. But like it has been so fruitful in my life. And not only that, but the Lord said to me, like I was saying, just to me, my story, but he said, Destiny, I couldn't allow you to be a mother when you wanted to be because you wouldn't have been the mother that I needed you to be. And he was right, because like I said, I was dealing with rejection. I was dealing with not really knowing who I was. I was dealing with insecurities. And I would have either been a helicopter mom, I would have been like, and he had to deal with me in order for me to be, I think we say it, facetiously, like I'm a generational curse breaker, right? But I don't think we understand the depth of those words. Like in order for
really
you to be a generational curse breaker, you have to be willing to go against the current, meaning God has to go back in a deeper way. Like for my second child, and this might take us a little way too far, but for my second child, in prayer, the Lord had revealed to me that I would lose a family member before my second child was conceived. And I was like, what? But it was my paternal grandfather. He literally passed away the day after he passed away June 29th of 2019. June 28th of 2020 was when my son was born. Wow. You understand that if we're a generational curse breaker, unfortunately, sometimes that requires a generation to pass away in order for us to break something, right?
That's good. That's so good. Oh man, what? You about to have us on here for a whole nother hour talking about generational curse breaking. We're not gonna do it, promise. So this was really good. I so appreciate you. If you can, let us know where we can find you, how we can connect with you. If people need resources from you, how they can obtain those resources so they can get into therapy.
So you can find me on realizingdestiny.com. Or theprayerpist.com if you search either one of those. On social media, if you search Realizing Destiny anywhere, I come up. I'm the only one. It's actually in the process of being trademarked.
I'm sorry. I'm getting excited for that. I like business stuff.
Listen. So, but yeah, if you go to Realizing Destiny, you'll find me anywhere. Also, if you search The Therapist, I'll come up as well.
Awesome. Well, you guys know how we end every show. We do it in prayer. So God, we love you. We thank you so much for who you are. God, I pray that whoever needed this message, whoever is dealing with infertility, I pray that they found comfort. I pray that they found steps in order to get closer to you and to be still and know that you are God and that you will converse with us, that you will have a conversation with us back. If we sit there and we're still enough, you will give us the direction that we need, oh God. So I pray that every woman that's been struggling, that are trying to find answers, God, I pray that they seek your face first, oh God, that they see who you are and they take it at face value. God, I pray that you speak to them clearly, that they understand the assignment that you have given them on their lives, oh God. I thank you so much for your blessings. I thank you so much for Destiny, God. I pray right now that you continue to mold her into who you've called her to be, that she is the woman that breaks the curse off of infertility in this world, oh God. I pray right now that the guide and the promise that you've given her, the purpose, God, I pray right now that it touches millions of women's lives who are suffering in this moment, oh God. We love you and we give your name all the honor and the glory and the praise. Amen.
Amen.
All right, guys. Well, that wraps up tonight's show. You have just listened to Virtue with Vision, the podcast. I will see you guys in August. You have just listened to the fastest growing faith-based podcast that empowers, inspires, and motivates your walk with Christ. That's Virtue with Vision, the podcast. Go into this week winning in virtue. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast on YouTube so you don't miss an episode. Virtue with Vision is available on all major platforms. That's right, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, and Amazon Music. Subscribe so you can check out all of my past episodes. And always remember, you deserve God's best because because you are God's best. Have an awesome week.